In the modern and postmodern age, we may not know what is right and true, but one thing we know for sure is that we must not impede progress. We must march forward at all costs, and any temptation to look backwards is the opposite of progress. And by this very loose logic, we are routinely stirred up by the so-called progressives into disregarding our existing traditions, as well as holding past traditions in contempt. But real, authentic progress isn't just about moving forward, it's about moving in the right direction. So if you're moving in the wrong direction, the most progressive thing you can do is turn around and go backwards. So instead of insisting that what we're doing right now is better than what we used to do simply because it happens later in a sequence of time, maybe we should abandon this fallacious rhetoric about progress and start asking ourselves, what is good? What is the right direction? What is true? And then do that. It's this so-called progressive attitude that has ingrained in us this idea that people who merely happen to be walking around right now are more advanced than our ancestors simply because we appeared at a later date. And when you look at it that way, the strength of the conviction grows a little weaker, at least I hope. But it's certainly an attitude and a prejudice that many of us carry to the point where if someone proposes a solution to a problem, if those who oppose this proposed solution can compare it to maybe a solution from the past, they can then denounce it as simply going backwards without ever having to defend why they think it's wrong. Well, I think it's worth exploring if this contempt for our ancestors is justified, because we've inherited a lot from them that we seem to take for granted. We even seem to think that we are the makers of our own fortune, and that just strikes me as very inaccurate. Let's consider a first fact, which is that however far you go back in generations, you will discover that our ancestors faced far greater adversity than we do. Some didn't have cars, some had to build their own homes and grow their own food. Some didn't have electricity and had to do everything by hand. Some didn't have plumbing or accessible education. Most of our ancestors didn't have anything like anesthesia, so that when you had to face a difficult medical operation, you just had to bite down on something hard and endure it. Most didn't have genetically modified crops or modern irrigation, so that if the weather didn't cooperate, there's a good chance that your crop would fail and you would face starvation. And then at that point, you just had to try to survive with what little you had. They didn't have natural gas to heat their homes. They didn't have screens to amuse themselves or lights to even read when it was dark. They had to go outside in the freezing cold to go to the bathroom. They had to bathe in cold water. They had to fight in wars, and on and on and on. The takeaway for us when we understand all of this adversity is that they had a lot of problems to solve, and they solved a lot of them, which means that we could learn a lot from them. The fact that we don't have a lot of these problems anymore isn't because we solved them, it's because they solved them and we take those solutions for granted. And in spite of all of that adversity, not only did they survive, but they thrived. Going back hundreds and hundreds of years, what you will find, aside from a few disasters or hiccups or exceptions, the trend is that each successive generation left their descendants better off than they found themselves. Now, if anything can be called progress, it's that. And this was certainly true for the baby boomer generation, which is my parents' generation. Their parents left them in a much better position than they found themselves, in spite of the fact that a pivotal moment in their lives was interrupted for several years by a war that they had to fight in. The baby boomer generation was the most prosperous generation ever. And they looked at that prosperity and then they said, this is all wrong. This is unjust. We need a revolution to correct this. We need to overturn all the philosophies and beliefs and the theologies that got us here. We're going to abandon Christianity and embrace secularism. We're going to abandon monogamy and family values and embrace sexual promiscuity. We're going to abandon the liberal arts and education and embrace every novel idea that comes out of academia. We're going to abandon the economic institutions that yielded so much economic prosperity, and we're going to abandon abandon the ethical beliefs of our ancestors. And if anyone objects, we're just going to say it's progress because it's new and different. And for anyone who wants to hold on to their traditions, we're going to denounce them as being regressive. And what have been the effects? The children of that generation, millennials and Gen Xers, are inheriting a civilization in decline. Millennials haven't learned the importance of family because their parents didn't give it to them. They haven't learned the importance of culture, especially religious culture, because their parents didn't give it to them. We haven't learned how to overcome adversity because our parents didn't experience much adversity. And we haven't learned how to honor the past because our parents despised it. Researchers try to measure well-being according to all kinds of metrics and outcomes. And for the first time in a long time, millennials are faring worse than their parents' generation, the revolutionary generation, the generation that was so arrogant that it thought that all of the prosperity that it inherited was a fluke that happened in spite of the stupidity of their ancestors. Millennials are earning less than their parents. They're having less success pairing off and having families of their own. They are suffering more from mental illness, and their life expectancy is already predicted to be lower. And every indication seems to show that Generation Z or Zoomers are going to continue in this downward trend. So when policymakers, experts, scientists, and authorities want to double down on this course we're on and howl about progress and as a justification for this trajectory, maybe it's worth asking ourselves, are we going in the wrong direction? And to remember, if we really care about progress, sometimes the most progressive thing you can do is go backwards. Hey, thanks for watching that. If you enjoyed it, then be sure to like and subscribe for more. And if you want to support the making of content like this, then please consider joining my online community, The Reinforcements. It's kind of like Patreon, but instead of being beholden to a big tech company, it's a website I built entirely myself. So there's no risk of us being censored or shut down or anything like that. There are hundreds of people who have already signed up, and our mission is to renew and reinforce the church. So if that's you, then come check it out. As an added bonus for certain tiers, I will also send you a gift box from Glory and Shine, which is a Catholic, family-owned and operated company. They make bath and body products. They're actually their beard balm I'm supporting, or I'm sporting right now. I'm not just a spokesperson, I'm actually a customer. So even if you don't join the Reinforcements, maybe check them out anyways. Glory and Shine, they're an amazing company.